Ghouls Film Review. I'm your host, Sarah Stephenson, and this is my co-host, Mike Stephenson.
Hi, everybody.
Yes, and tonight we are going to be reviewing that fourth in the franchise, Psycho 4, The Beginning, which started in 1990.
Good one. I like it, actually.
Yes.
I really like this one more so than probably number 3. And the way this movie was actually written, it's actually written without referring back to Psycho 2 and 3. So, technically speaking, you could have had Psycho 1 and Psycho 4 straight after it,
Yeah.
and it'd still work.
Yeah, well, Joseph Stefano, he was the screenwriter for the first Psycho movie. He came back to do this fourth one to write the screenplay for
and
this
he
one.
didn't like
And he
other-
didn't like the
other
Emma
two.
Spool, Lila Crane
That one.
vengeance
That was
story.
number 2.
So they
yeah.
he kind of decided to go back to the 1961 to get some resources
Yeah,
from.
so what he did, this is a sequel come prequel, wasn't it?
Yeah, sort of like that.
It's a mixture. Had present day stuff and retro stuff going back to
Yeah.
before it all started, sort of stuff.
Yeah, so it has a lot of flashbacks, not flashing back to Emma Spool
yeah.
or Lila Crane
Or even the Psycho 3.
or even even Marion Crane, whom we've often talked about so much in this podcast.
Yeah.
So it goes back
movie.
to the first two victims, Norman
Well,
kills.
yeah, the early one. Yeah.
ones.
Where who's learning his trade?
Yes, and the death of his own mother and her lover.
Yeah. I've always wondered how Mummy snuffed it. Well, you'll find out, won't you?
So let's talk about who stars in this one. Obviously,
Well,
we obviously
for
know
the-
Anthony is involved.
yeah, well, for the fourth and last time, Anthony Perkins reprised his role as Norman Bates. And I've said before, I mean, he's the only guy who could actually do this with some sort of conviction. He's a natural for this part. Unfortunately, he died about 2 years after this movie was
Yeah,
made. He was
very
battling HIV at the time and stuff,
Yeah.
but he still put up a good performance, I'd
Yeah,
say.
he put up a very big fight to continue working.
Yeah, he loved working. He loved acting. Now, like we said, it was a prequel and a sequel. So the sequel part, the present day stuff, was Anthony Perkins, but the young Norman Bates was played by Henry Thomas. Now, I've got mixed feelings about Henry, but I think he did a good job. He carried over the personality of Norman quite
Henry
well.
Also starred in E.T. Extraterrestrial.
He was the alien, was he?
No, he was the
no.
young kid.
The
Steven,
kid in the bike.
Yeah,
Okay, right,
who's
yeah.
from Steven Spielberg's
So
movie.
he had E.T. living in his cupboard.
Yeah.
Okay, that was him. Okay, right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he looked really great for this part of this movie.
Okay. Now, Mother, before she became a mummy, and when she's a real mummy, I'm confused now. Now, before Mummy got snuffed it, they needed to have a live person walking around. So, instead of casting for it, they actually asked Olivia Hussey to play the role. They wanted a relatively good-looking woman, youngish, whatever, to fill the role of a young mother, and I think she did a pretty good job there.
Yeah, even though throughout this movie, throughout the franchise, we always left it to guesswork that she was a mid-age 40-something-year-old who is really old.
Well, she would have been middle-aged 40, but she was young 40.
Yeah, I know.
So she was very attractive and played a very good role.
Yeah, so
frustrated.
it was left up
maybe,
to our
Yeah.
left up to our guesswork whether or not she was a mid-aged woman who
She
spoke
was
mid-aged.
She was. Yeah, but if she was something like 20 years old when she had Norman, and Norman's supposed to be, say, 18 in this movie, she's only 38. You know,
Yes.
she's not an old woman.
Yeah, so
not by any means.
So who else stars in this movie?
Well, I'm not going to mention everybody, but I will mention the last one on my list. A lady by the name of CCH Pounder. Now, she plays a lady who's called Fran Ambrose, and she's she's a radio talk back host sort of thing of a show. And she's doing a lot of talking to the modern day Norman Bates, talking about boys who kill their mothers.
Matricide, in other words.
That's exactly right. And and she plays a really good part. I mean, I think I've seen her name in lots of different movies over the years, but this one here, I think she carries it really good. And say, right, without her playing that role, I would have been a bit more lame, I think. So a lame movie. So it's quite good. Yeah.
Yeah. So, who else stars in this one? I think.
Well, I didn't do a big list of everybody. They're the main ones.
Well, what about that Dr. Richmond? I think his name is.
Well, he was only a bit. He was just an arrogant twit trying to flog his book, and he was buggered off. So I'll leave the room, don't come back, and Fran Ambrose took over.
Yeah, so
I don't care.
if you guys haven't watched the first one of Psycho, you would find that that's the name of the psychiatrist who talked to Norman while at the police station at the end of the movie, and that's in the 1961.
But he might have treated him too.
Treated him a
might
little.
have treated them at the asylum.
Yeah, a little bit.
Well, he wrote a book on him. He must have treated him a bit.
Yeah, well, anyway, he may or not, because after all, we did have another psychiatrist in the second movie that looked after him.
Can I just stop you just a moment? Now, this movie, unlike the others, I think the other three went to theatrical release. This went straight to Showtime.
Yeah, right to TV.
This went straight to TV. And I think it was put there. It was actually hosted by they played the Marion Crane. That
would have been Janet Leigh.
I think Janet Leigh actually hosted the program, doing a retrospective show on the Psycho, and this movie was actually the main part of that as well. So it all came together as a television show with a movie thrown in.
Yeah, that's cool. So anyway, the last person on my list is Thomas.
Crikey, your handwriting's terrible. I don't know your handwriting. A ma'am?
Yeah.
A man.
Well, he's plays the lover to Norma
Mrs.
Bates.
Yeah.
Mrs. Bates' lover.
I mean, it wasn't bad. She was a good-looking one. She was a bit of a cracker, Olivia Hussey, back in those days. So
If you
it
haven't,
wouldn't have been hard playing that role.
Yeah. If you haven't seen what she looks like and you haven't seen this movie, I advise you definitely check it out. But I also advise check. She's also stars in Stephen King's It, the old mid-series TV show one.
The ones we like.
With
the guy out of the Waltons, that guy. What's his name? I can't remember his name. I got Alzheimer's. Oh, bugger. Oh.
Yeah, I think we're not surprised there.
Oh, well, you can't remember everything.
Yeah, so should we dive into the movie before you get your memory back?
Who are you? No. Yeah. Well, I won't say that you like telling the story, but it's a good. It pretty much. I don't know. It's how do you want to take it? Do you want to take it modern day with retros, or you want to tell a retro story? How do you want to do this? This is going to be a bit awkward.
It's not awkward. You make it awkward.
Okay, you take over, and I'll throw a couple of quips in occasionally to make it interesting.
It starts off. You hear the Psycho theme throughout this movie, so they brought that back into this movie, so to make it look more tight up.
You can't have a Psycho movie without the Psycho music. It's like Jaws.
Yes.
It's really good.
Yeah, so we hear a radio station and our. Let me see, what's her name? Oh yeah, Fran is doing a radio about matricide with these the criminal consultant. I mean, not psychiatrist who talks about it.
Yeah.
And
who has written a book recently.
Yes, and he talks about it, and he has another person with him who's a criminal who
he's just got out of jail.
Who admits that freely to himself and to everyone, I killed my mother, yada yada yada,
And his grandpa helped get him out of jail. Isn't that
yeah,
lovely?
and he even admits that his daughter was a complete and utter bitch.
Horrible, nasty. Yeah.
Which makes me think,
So,
was it matricide or was he the one murdering her?
Well, was it justifiable homicide? I mean, if his daughter was a really, really nasty piece of work, and she could have made her son, well, put her son in a situation where he snapped and killed her. So,
yeah, who knows?
justifiable homicide.
Or maybe the grandpa killed her and made it look like his grandson do it.
Well, son-in-law, no, grandson-in-law, it was his daughter.
Yeah, his granddaughter and his grandson.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, grandson. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I'm getting mental block. I'm not having a good day today.
No, it isn't. So anyway, they finished their interview with the grandfather and the grandson, and they head off to do their whatever business because he's on parole. So that means he has a certain time, certain curfew to return back to his home and everything. So anyway, Fran gets a call from a mysterious man named Ed.
Well, yeah, he calls himself Ed. He
Yes.
doesn't say who. He doesn't want to release what his real name is.
Yeah, that turns out to be Norman Bates in taking on the name Ed from Ed Gein, if you will. You know, if you know the story of Ed Gein, you know it came from that Robert Bloch got the story for Psycho for that.
Well, he got inspired by Ed Gein, and Ed Gein was the the catalyst for Texas Chainsaw Massacre and a slew of other movies.
Yes, plenty, if you believe it.
Well, that's everyone tells that, right? Yeah, so
Yes.
must be true.
So Ed Gein, I mean not Ed Gein, sorry. So Norman explains how is another similar subject that's similar to the what the psychiatrist is talking about, and he says that he likes to hear him talk, yada yada yada, and he says that he was one of the many people who have murdered his own mother.
But he wouldn't say too much.
Yeah, and he
So
says...
the psychiatrist trying to figure out, I wonder who this guy is.
Yeah, and he says... And Norman says flat out in this scene that he's going to kill again.
Scary.
Yeah, it is scary.
However, he wouldn't say who, when, why, whatever. And
yeah, anyway.
Yeah.
He then goes on to say that how he had killed before, how he killed other women in the past too. Anyway.
Exactly right.
Yeah, so Norman, we flash back probably before Marion Crane's death to when he murdered another woman who was about his age and
a young girl, really cute.
Yeah, and it was the 4th of July, I think.
Well, that's fireworks. It could have been, yeah.
Yeah, so, and she wanted to go up and sort of have sex while it's going on.
She was really cool and cute and everything else. Now, if Norm was halfway normal, he would have said, bugger mama.
Yeah.
She was really good.
Yeah, well, he wasn't, he was aroused, pretty much.
He was interested.
Yes. Yeah,
I mean, anyone alive would have been interested.
Mm-hmm. So she heads up to the house while Norman is busy with a client in the hotel and motel, and he goes up to the house and finds her there, playing hide and seek with him.
Yeah.
And she gives him a bit of a jump scare, or him too.
They screw each other a bit, maybe.
Yeah, so they head into Norman's room, and she strips off.
Oh, she was really keen, honestly, yeah.
Yeah, and Norman is
and she was sober too, folks.
Yes, and Norman is really aroused by her look, by her appearance.
Yeah, no clothes.
Yes.
That would arouse anybody his age.
Yes, so...
I'm pretty sure.
So young Norman is slowly... Well, before he gets down to the nitty-gritty, he decides to head off into the other room to check on his mother. And she, of course...
As any good son would.
Yes, and like any granny or any mother telling him to get rid of her and kill her and stuff.
This is the part that gets me. Norman is talking to his mother, who's lying on the bed, having a rest. Now, mother's dead.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
D-E-D. Dead. No,
Go
no,
ahead.
yeah, dead. No, there you go.
Go on.
We saw the body of Mummy, dearest,
Twitch.
twitch once or twice while the actor was doing his lines and doing the voice of Mother.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if that was intentional, but it seemed so wrong and out of
Yeah.
place. I think they made a mistake there.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense because this takes place just after Norma got killed, so it doesn't make sense.
Well, she was dead.
Yeah. So anyway, while she's
If she was alive, she could have done her own killing.
yeah, so while she's in bed, she whispers to Norman to, well, get dressed into her dress and put on the wig, and
And go and kill this girl.
which he does. And just like in the first movie, he after the death occurs, he yells, "Oh my gosh, mother, blood, blood!" Ah.
I wonder where they got the line from, hey?
Yeah. Well, Joseph Stefano probably used the same lines from the first movie for this one a little bit here and there. You'll soon see.
You think?
Yes.
I don't even copy the original writer. Oh, it was him, wasn't it? Yeah.
Dummy. Yeah, just so you guys know, it's I was wrong about last time that I said Joseph Stefano directed it. It's actually a guy named, what's his name?
Director was Mick Garris.
Yeah, so Mick Garris directed it. Joseph Stefano written it.
Yeah, he wrote it. He's very good.
Yes. So anyway, we flash back to the present, and Farron asks him, Norman, has he ever? This has been the first time he spoke to a corpse, and Norman says no. He kind of spoke to her the moment she was already dead, or pretty much died.
Well, so he was going through a lot of mental shock from, like the psychiatrist says, probably worst crime. What did he say? Or the lady say that one of the worst crimes a boy could do is kill his mother because it leaves a lasting, really nasty scar on the psyche.
Yeah. So anyway, of course, as we go on, the psychiatrist guy asks him, where were you at this time? Location wise, and of course Norman says, what is the geography got to do with this?
Norman didn't want to give too much away, did he?
Yeah, he didn't. So anyway, so as the story goes, so let me see. Oh yeah, now we get another. He gets another call from his wife hinting that she's going to be leaving work soon and was going to probably be celebrating his birthday.
Oh yes, Norman's birthday. Lovely.
Yes, so she suggests maybe you can pick up the cake while I'm, working, and he says that the dinner will be ruined if he left the house and all that stuff.
So he had something right. He wants to take the telephone anyway.
Just so you guys know, he's no longer living at his mother's house.
No,
he's
with a
living
nice
with
lady.
his new wife. Her name's Connie.
She's a
She's
shrink at the asylum.
Psychiatrist.
Shrink, yeah.
I don't like
a psychiatrist. Yeah.
Yes.
It's shrink.
Yeah, so they kind of got married and settled down, and Norman has no more connection to his old life as before.
No, I mean the old house and motel are getting ready for demolition, aren't they?
That's what it says. So anyway, Connie suggests that she'll pick up the cake and leave it bring it home after she finishes work.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yes.
Aha.
So
What sort of cake it was?
I don't know. It was probably this.
I feel like chocolate cakes. I love chocolate cakes.
Well, it's probably the same cake we see at the credits at the beginning. Probably, I might be wrong.
Well, he didn't make it.
Yeah, of course not. But then
Who was making it?
the baker.
That's the bakery. Well, there you go. Hey, the baker got his hands in the movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's true. So anyway, Norman contacts the radio station again. He kind of keeps hanging up because he's filled with pent up issues about revealing everything.
Yeah, a little bit nervous. I mean,
Yes.
5 minutes of fame. Hey.
Oh yeah, Connie also mentioned something about a little detail that got him upset earlier. I won't say what yet.
Oh, okay.
I want to leave it as a surprise.
Oh, come on.
Yeah. So anyway, Norman says he's not upset or anything, but we
He,
know
he looks annoyed.
he looks annoyed and he looks upset.
Yes.
Yeah, and she
In
says,
a nasty possible
yeah,
upset.
and Connie says, "It will work out, Norman. You see all that stuff."
And they're going to Bali for a holiday. No,
Nah.
oh, that's a nice surprise. Okay, no, okay.
Yeah. So anyway, Norman gets back on the phone and he talks a little bit more with Fran and the psychiatrist guy, and of course, the psychiatrist guy, he tries to drastically make it look like more like his ordinary appointments with his patients by saying, "Does this well." Well,
He tried to take control of it all, and Norman wasn't a patient of his, so you could really say, "Yeah, I can hang up anytime I like." So you say, "Be careful what you say."
Yeah, I mean, if you're, I mean, if this was any if it was done in a psychiatrist's office, you have control
At a
and
nut house.
yeah, and you would have orderly guys running in and out, be able to control the situation if it got out of hand.
Yeah, well, I'm going to have you for an hour, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, that
so
sort of thing. If
on the radio, you can just
on the
hang up.
radio, they'll just hang up and say that
Tough titties.
tough titties.
Yeah.
So
Can
anyway,
I say tough titties on the radio?
yeah. So Norman goes on and talks about how about his upcoming dad's death, who passed away before this stuff happened. And this interesting scene comes to mind because in this scene we see the Norman Bates' house as it was many years ago.
Very pretty.
Very pretty.
Nice yellowy canary yellow.
yeah,
I wouldn't, not my favourite colour, but
Yeah, and the gardens, the grassy areas have lots of flowers.
Flower gardens. Yeah, it looks so pretty. Yeah.
It looks so pretty.
Not sinister at all, did
Yeah,
it?
nothing. Quite different from the 1960 one
I'm going to
to
mention
this
Elvira
one.
living there.
Yeah,
sorry.
so this is another flashback to the past where Norman is like, say, 7 years old, I think he was.
Yeah, 7 or 8 years, something.
Yeah,
He's a young kid.
And his dad died, not relating to Emma Spool by any way, but he says something about that his father was stung to death by bees.
Yeah, he must have an allergy to bees. He must have annoyed a swarm of bees or a hive or something. He got stung to death.
Although I mentioned to Mike the other day, maybe Miss Spool threw a bunch of bees' nest at him and the bees attacked him.
That could be possible. Why didn't the bees attack her?
Maybe she's not allergic to bees.
Oh, okay. That wasn't the answer, don't we?
Yeah, and Norman probably never had a clue that he had an aunt.
Anyway.
So anyway,
Daddy's in a casket or a coffin.
And his face is very horrible, and they decided to cover it up with a handkerchief, I think.
Yeah, it's okay.
To avoid...
So people wouldn't have to look at him. If that was the case, why didn't they just close the lid on the coffin?
I don't know.
I would have.
Maybe it was Norma wanted an open coffin thing for everyone.
Have an open coffin with something over his face so you can't even see.
So we're moving aside to that point. Norman is in his mother's arms, and she softly touches her son.
And she wiggles the fingers and tickles him.
Yeah, and Norman starts giggling out loud, and his mother gives him a slight slap on the face, telling him, saying,
come on,
"How can you be disrespectful of the dead?"
Cow.
Yeah, well, she didn't realize that. Anyway, with one of the fans that blows on the actual coffin and blows the handkerchief off the man's face.
Yeah, and then they close the lid.
Yes, and
told us to close
and we see Anthony Perkins in the adult Norman Bates, the background, watching.
Yeah, these like he's superimposed into the old scene. Yeah, so.
To make it look like he's seeing this from a audience perspective.
Yeah,
you know, the third
still
person.
fresh in his mind.
Yeah,
so to speak.
the third person in the room, sort of thing. You know.
But not gonna see him.
Yes. So we then see the coffin lid bang open, like very creepily.
Rap tapping on my chamber door.
Yes, a lot similar to, sort of the, there's another scene in this movie where during another victim gets killed later in the story.
Is that the older lady?
Yeah, the older lady in the flashback.
Even,
Where
they had cougars back in those days too, folks.
yeah, and he kills her and stuffs her body in the trunk, and she's not quietly dead, and she kind of bangs on the hood of, the boot of the car, and that's really much more to think about.
Sinking under the water in the you-know-where.
Yeah, so anyway, Norman then later on says in another flashback a little bit of a nicer scene about his mother, like them picnicking outside in a nice area, and it's a sunny day.
Happy family.
Happy family.
I expect the Care Bears to come running out from under the trees almost.
Yeah, Norman and his mother enjoying the scenery, and he was still 7 in this scene, so you know.
Little man.
Yes, and Norman feels, it feels like a nice moment. Anyway, Fran thinks it's moving and says that it sounds like a pretty picture and all that stuff.
Yeah, lovely folks.
And then she mentions to the audience, on the radio, this is Fran on the radio talking to a man who says he killed his mother, and this is when Norman adds, plus her boyfriend too.
And then the psychiatrist knew who it was.
Yeah, and of course she says, "Did he abuse you too?" But Norman says, "No, but not so much. But he didn't. She didn't need him. All that stuff.
She had me.
She had me, and
so a little bit of what's the word? Oedipus conflict, or
what's
the word
Oedipus?
for it? Oedipus is an old story. I think it's where a guy was in love with his mother. I think Oedipus or something or other. I'm not very good at Greek mythology, but yeah, I remember some sort of thing where he's in love. I think he's secretly in love with his mother because they were the only people in each other's lives for since his father died. It could be 10 years, 11 years. Wow. Nobody else. Yeah, she didn't have anybody, and he didn't have a girlfriend. So yeah, they relied on each other for friendship and company.
That is an interesting twist. I mean, and it does seem like an interesting.
Well, that's where the jealousy factor comes in. Mm-hmm. She's jealous of this other guy coming in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we flash back again to Norman, who's probably about 16 or 15. I'm not sure. And this is when Henry Thomas appears in this scene and throughout the whole movie.
Yeah, he's getting older now, yeah.
Yeah, so he's running back and forth from the hotel and from his house, and his mother is scared to death of thunder and lightning and all that stuff.
Yes.
And she advises him to crawl into bed,
take off
his clothes off, and
leave his underwear on.
Yes, and crawl into bed to cuddle her because she's afraid of thunder and lightning.
He's laying in bed, the mother's in the night, and he's got his undies on.
This is where it gets a little weird.
Yeah, well, he started to, was he hugging her or was she hugging him?
She's hugging him, down the waist, in a more of a, if this wasn't his mother, this would be more romantic.
Yeah, and she was scared, and then he started to get excited.
Yes.
Yes. Let's talk about the first thing that pops up, sort of thing. So he leaves the room, and his mother could understand why he left the room.
Yeah.
The guy was getting an
erection.
erection.
I think that Norman says the adult Norman says that he was kind of getting too big for his trousers.
He was. Yes. He had a growing concern.
Yes, and this freaks out Norman, and he tries to hide this from his mother, but she doesn't stop there. She comes into his room and she sees the dirty nudist magazines lying on his desk.
Some gilly magazines.
And she calls him a filthy pig and tells him to throw the stuff out in his while running out there. He has to wear
it. It was raining and stuff.
Yeah, and he has to wear his underwear throughout the time he dumps the magazines, which is a very abusive approach to parenting.
At his age, a guy's going to be, and most guys are going to be inquisitive. No matter who you are, what you say, even if you try to look like, nag out you probably do secretly, or you have fantasies and stuff. And he was. And he was lonely.
Yeah, and when Norman goes out there, as he puts some stuff into the bin, his mother is out there,
with
I think.
a nice raincoat.
Yeah, and says, someday I'm going to be a little more firmer with you,
Well, he was getting firm with her.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So...
Sorry, folks.
Yeah, so the psychiatrist guy says, "Is this maybe this whole this whole thing, the relationship between him and his mother was this the abusive thingness that was happening between them was both abusive but
Welcome.
sexually wanted or something."
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, they thought there was mixed signals.
Mixed signals, like
Yeah.
you know how in some couples they think a bit of mixture of harsh love and all that stuff. When you think about
Don't go too far into it. Okay.
well, it's in some relationships, or even I remember in a new tricks movie TV show, they were investigating about a man who liked it rough. Being a little bit insulted and very whipped by whips to get a reaction.
So you may get a female whipping him as well.
Yeah, and be abusive nature stuff. Yeah.
I've never actually had that, but maybe.
Yeah, well, embarrassment and humiliation could be.
Some people like that dominating
people like
sort
that.
of thing. Yeah, yeah. But anyway, irrespective.
Yeah.
We're digressing here.
Yeah,
I
I know, but the psychiatrist kind of brought that into this conversation, and Norman says, if you're talking about this sort of thing, I would have not killed those other women in the past.
Yeah, exactly right. He could have enjoyed their company in more ways than one, folks.
Yes, so we then break, and then I think we get to another scene where Norman talks about, let me see, about another incident where he got a hard on, and this scene was when on the summertime.
Very, very. They're having a heat wave, and it was a cool, hot night, and he made
Yeah.
up some iced tea for her and stuff.
Yeah.
And she wanted them to put
Rub
perfume,
some
lemon scented.
lemon scented oil or water.
Or like a perfumey type stuff.
Yeah,
oil,
so she asked him to rub her down near the legs
stuff and,
down here.
Yeah,
And while he's rubbing, she knocks the bottle and him off on the ground, and they start tumbling. Which
the
looks,
friendly tumbling on the floor like lovers would, not a mother and a child.
Yeah, and he gets a
He gets a horn. He gets an erection. Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
and this annoys her completely.
She snaps.
And she snaps. She then drags Norman over to a wardrobe, puts a dress on him, then puts the lipstick on his mouth. And
Hey, it's his first dress. Did he get high heels with it?
I don't think
No,
so.
no.
So anyway, she says, "Girl, now you're a girl," or
You're a
stuff.
girl.
And
Your wee is only for peeing with it. What's this? Something
she
really
kept.
weird
Yeah,
and
she said
crazy.
some weird stuff about his, his willy dick and all that.
Well,
So
it's only used for pee or something.
yes,
like
so
that.
she stuffs him in a closet, which I find abusive when I think about
very
the scene.
nasty.
And she hands him the jar that had the iced tea in it. I think.
Have a squirt in there if you need to go to the toilet.
Yeah, and she
remember that's all it's used for.
Yeah, and she locks the door, and Norman is like completely upset about being trapped in
She's
there.
a fruitcake, she was.
Yeah,
by
poor
this
Norman.
time,
And the adult Norman is kind of mimic the same scene, because
he was laying on the floor of the kitchen, wasn't he?
Yeah,
Something. Yeah.
and
Reliving it a bit.
yeah, and then we have much later on another scene between the young Norman and his mother where he's hitting some rugs, in the front yard.
Getting the dust out of it.
Yeah, and she comes out of the house and she hits him with a newspaper that says that they're going to build a new highway on the.
And it's going to bypass the motel.
Yeah, meaning their business will be closed.
And that was mentioned in the first movie.
Yes.
So a nice continuity thing there, wasn't there?
Yeah, true. And she kind of blames Norman, says nasty things to him. I won't mention them out loud, but
It's blaming him for all her problems and stuff.
And she even adds the horrible words that
nobody wants to ever hear.
No one wants to hear that she says that you killed me in my. I should have killed you in my womb
or something rather. Yeah.
And it is rather horrible.
Very nice.
And I would never say that.
She was a bitter, twisted, nasty lady.
Yeah. So Norman was.
I'm glad she died.
Yeah.
Natural causes. Well, not necessarily natural.
Yeah.
But
So Norman is a little upset and a little confused by her reactions, and Fran in the present says she sounds awful. Of course, Norman defends her, saying that you didn't know her. She wasn't always like this.
She had good moments.
Yeah. He remarks that there were moments that she was good, and other times she was very
She
cruel.
was,
and nasty.
let's say the word. She was schizophrenic, people.
Yeah. He even sees her in room 1. And this is when the
yes.
peephole in the office
Norman
comes to
didn't
mind.
make the peephole.
His dad did.
Because Dad was a pervert, maybe. Who knows?
Probably. I'm not. We don't know that.
Well,
Again, in this movie, it doesn't mention in the first one that the hotel was built after his dad's death.
I'd have to go back and revisit that because I had the distinct impression that the motel was built after Dad passed away.
Yeah, and that's when Norma she started having relationships with another guy, and he encouraged her to build the hotel.
Yeah, not necessarily the guy she stayed with, but yeah, he encouraged her, and she spent the money and had a good life there for a while with the motel.
Yeah.
And the road moved.
Yeah, so in this scene, she's in room 1 and she's acting crazy
Meltdown
and
time,
weird.
folks.
And adult Norman thinks that maybe his psychotic nature was because
It's
of
genetic.
genetics.
It's passed down from parent to child sort of thing.
Yeah,
so.
and Norman is a little scared about this. I wouldn't be surprised the adult Norman, he's been trying his absolute hardest to figure out if his psycho behavior has something to do with genetics more than that of his past traumas.
Yeah, so everything indicates that he got it from his mummy.
Yeah. By this time, I think that the psychiatrist guy was getting a little annoyed that he and the radio guys wanted him to leave because they didn't think that his behavior, his abrupt words were gonna make
his style of talking to Norman would have just had Norman just freeze up and just hang up and not talk to them. So they didn't want that, obviously, and it's about ratings.
Yeah, and, yeah, but then again, I think Fran, she cares about to hear his story, but at the same time, she doesn't want this psychiatrist guy to keep on, pegging him for information. Like, even though the stuff Norm is saying may contradict what he says in his book.
Well, that's the whole point. He actually said that on his way out the door. Yeah, pretty much he only came here to sort of promote your book, so you can go now.
Yeah, so he kind of goes eventually, and it's up to Fran and the radio station to work out what to do about Norman and his problems.
Yeah, thinking he might be going to kill somebody tonight.
Yeah.
But there's nothing. They can't say anything yet or do anything because Dawn hasn't said anything more.
Yes. So anyway, Norman is a little still shaken by what he said.
Shaken, not stirred. No,
quite right. Yeah. Anyway, he asks about the psychiatrist absent, and they said that he had to catch a plane.
I can't catch a taxi.
Yeah, most likely.
Yeah.
So anyway, we then cut to Norman meeting his mother's lover
Chet.
Chet.
What a name.
Chet Rudolph.
Chet Rudolph. Chet Rudolph, the red-nosed bloody reindeer. I mean, he was an arrogant,
they
nasty
arrive at the
beast.
hotel, and they, surprise, went to room 1.
For a bit of rumpty bumpty.
Yes.
And guess who looks in on him?
Yes. Norman goes down to check out the situation through the peephole.
Now that was quite funny. There's someone in the shower, and you're thinking, "Oh, it might be his mum." No, it's Chet.
Yeah.
So we get a bit of a look at Chet with no clothes on.
Well, he puts a towel on.
Oh, he does, yeah, but
we didn't get to see anything. I didn't see anything. I saw nothing. I've seen
nothing. But anyway, and
So-
Chet comes back to bed and
Yeah.
a bit of bumpy bumpy with
Yeah.
Mummy Dearest, and she's
And-
all happy and smiley.
Yeah, and next
Must have
morning,
been good.
next morning, she's all cheerful, like all happy. She's like, "Oh, good morning, good morning,
It
good
must
morning."
have been good, hey, folks.
Yeah, and
yeah.
Norman tries to play it cool, keep quiet, do not say anything type of
He
attitude.
felt like he's cheated.
But Norman's realized is the change in the atmosphere and says that you saw us come up to the house, all that stuff.
He saw more than that.
Yeah. Anyway, she says that that she met Chet in a bar. He used to be a bartender, just so you know.
And he's going to come and live at the house and help run the motel.
Yeah.
And you can see.
Oh yeah, just so you guys know, Chet, I think he previously was married, and
Oh, yeah, and
he has to
damaged
sort
goods,
his
folks.
and he sort of has to sort out his divorce. This makes me think of Sam Loomis back in the first Psycho
Exactly
a little
right.
bit when I think
Exactly
about it.
right, yeah. I never thought about that. A new Sam.
Yes,
but
well-
this guy's a real loser, really
Yeah,
nasty and
yeah.
arrogant. And he treated Norman like crap. Yeah, is that crap? Yeah. that's
Yeah,
crap.
I think
Crap
that's
crap.
the only word I can
He
think
did,
about
no,
their relationship.
He was very,
here.
very nasty. He
Yeah.
wasn't. He didn't encourage a good, healthy relationship
Yeah.
with the boy.
Yeah,
Which
speaking
made
of
it harder.
Yeah, speaking of that, we fade in onto another scene where Chet and Norman are bonding, and they're boxing outside of her house.
No, Chet is trying to bond with Norman.
Yeah,
Norman doesn't want anything to do
yeah,
with Chet.
yeah. So Chet is like all box,
Yeah,
box,
and he's going to teach him how to box.
and
Come on, yeah, hit me,
and
come on,
he
yeah,
and he
yeah.
kept on calling Norman a girl and all that stuff.
Yeah, and then trying to goad him into a fight.
and Norman wants to pound him even if he was a bad swing.
Yeah, he had to go, and then Chet just slays a couple into him. He's
Yeah.
flat, he's back on the grass. Everyone's standing over him, Mummy included, going, just smiling and saying, "Yeah, you're a loser, pretty much."
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
not very
Norman's
nice.
bleeding from his nose. Talk
Yeah.
about bad behavior, if you ask me.
Yeah,
This is-
Mother didn't sit. And it wasn't about the same time he got ready to go.
yeah, I mean, yeah, this was sort of the last straw for
Yeah.
young Norman in this scene.
Yes, young Normie.
Yes.
Ah.
So, yeah. Anyway, then Fran tries to ask Norman flat out, is it right for you to go out and start killing again when you have such a good life? Norman even mentions about his wife and their beautiful life and all that stuff, and how his next murder has nothing to do with his mother's possessive behavior towards him.
His mother's got no control over me now. I
Yeah.
see. He says something like, doesn't he?
Yeah, somehow.
It's my choice.
Yeah, so this has. He says that this is going to be this death is going to be on my hands, meaning it's going to be by me.
Yeah, mother's got nothing
Nothing to do with it. Yeah, so he says flat out who he's going to kill. He says
I'm gonna kill my wife.
yes, because he found out that she was pregnant.
Now, the reason why, I'll take it over here for a minute.
Okay, go on.
Because it gets a bit complicated. The reason why, when he first met her, he said, well, we're getting a relationship, that's fine, but definitely no kiddies. Because he thought if it was genetic,
Yes.
he didn't want to pass his seed on to another generation, which
Yeah.
is a smart thought.
Yeah.
She wanted a kitty, so she went off the pill.
Yeah.
Or
and-
whatever, yeah. And so he didn't know about this, and she fell pregnant without his knowing.
Yeah, and Connie says that she doesn't believe in the genetic
Side
side
of
to
things.
this thing. Maybe she kind of had a different theory about it. Other scientists may
So-
give
and she said something
different
like,
answers.
"Your child will love you, and you love the child, and there'll be nothing wrong."
Yeah,
and
but that's much later on.
But the point is
Yeah.
that at this point, he thought he didn't want to bring another him into the world.
Yeah, so
Hmm.
anyway, we flash back to young Norman again, who's about to do the evil deed by poisoning his mother
He's
and her
making
lover.
a nice jug of iced tea for Mummy and Chet.
Yeah, this kind of
Yeah,
fits in with the
lovely.
story because they kept saying that she was poisoned by tea. So this is iced tea
Yeah,
that she's
iced tea,
poisoned
yeah,
with.
a nice big jug of it, yeah, but
Yeah.
iced tea, bit
Yeah,
of vanilla
so-
essence,
and
bit of cyanide, you know.
what was it they
I
poisoned?
think it's cyanide.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
he put liquid cyanide, just poured some in. I think with a
A-
whole bloody
a
bottle
whole
in.
bottle
didn't he?
in.
Yeah, that'd do it.
oh yeah, Yeah, so anyway, he pours it in and he stirs it and he heads upstairs where where Chet and Norma are
Lounging around on the
lounging
bed. They
around.
might have been just had finished sexing or whatever. Who knows?
Yeah, and they're
We
about
didn't
to.
see that bit.
Yes.
Wasn't relevant to the movie. But
Yes.
it's implied, isn't
Yeah,
it? Yes.
and this is where the bit where she says, "Do you like my new kimono?" And she says,
He says it's lurid and walks out the door.
"Yeah." And Norma and Chet laugh at his weird comments,
Yeah.
thinking that who would say that?
So Chet has a nice drink of the nice old, nice iced coffee.
Yeah, he
iced
drinks
tea.
it and gargles it, and
yummy,
he
yummy,
goes
yummy.
for a shower in the next room.
Well, he goes to the bathroom to do something in there, whether he's
Yes.
going to have a shower or a pee or something.
Yeah, and Norma is both sipping and a bit jabbing the actual iced tea on herself
And then she
while
takes
she
a couple of
listens.
gulps of it, and
Drink.
then after she has a few gulps,
She sees Chet coming out of the bathroom.
he doesn't look very well, folks.
Yeah, and Norman is like outside the doorway.
Just peeking
and
through.
Norman, I would, if I were Norman, I would be like not inside the same room as Chet and Norma in this scene.
He want
I
to
would
make sure his handyman work was being
done.
done.
But I think I would have run like miles away from
He
this
had to
scene.
clean up the mess.
True. But while this is happening, Norma and Chet don't take this lying down and try to chase Norman and try to kill him.
Yeah, and obviously a bit weakened by the poison.
Yes.
And,
but Chet is a very strong man, so he has the better chance of grabbing for Norman and kicking
he
his
tried
butt.
going, and doesn't Chet fall downstairs
Yeah,
there and stuff?
True.
And tumble,
Norman
tumble.
has the upper
Bonk.
hand in this scene, and Norma comes running out and tries to get him
And
to.
he keeps backing away, and so he's staggering and stuff. And then she collapses and stuff, different
Yeah,
things.
soon enough,
and,
he
yeah.
drags her lifeless body to the basement, and she's lying in the rocking chair, I think.
Yeah, sitting in the rocking chair where Mother used to sit when she's a mummy. Isn't that cute?
Yes, and she's, of course,
Almost dead.
but she's choking on her vomit or whatever, and
too weak to talk.
and she looks at Norman and slowly dies.
And Chet comes up behind him. I don't know. This Chet must have a constitution like a huge bull or something or other.
Yeah.
Because he should have been dead upstairs.
I don't know. Anyway, he lies dead, and they're both in the basement. And
Now, that's the part that gets me.
me too.
If Mummy and Chet were up in the bedroom upstairs having sex, dressed in their jammies,
Whatever.
and Norman poisoned them, all good groovy things, and the police come there, wouldn't they say, why were they in the basement?
I don't know. Maybe we're
He
picking.
took Mummy to the basement. Instead of saying, I'll take Mummy back upstairs and throw her on the bed, he took her in the basement. And Chet was in the basement.
Yeah, well,
So, I don't know.
it makes for an interesting final scene for the movie, but I don't know why that would be.
I don't know.
Yeah. So anyway, Norman.
I want to die in bed.
Yeah. So Norman flashes back to the present, and Fran is asking, would he stay on the line to avoid killing anyone?
Yeah, because I think near the end of the radio show, but she asked him to stay on line even after the show finishes.
Yeah.
So they can keep talking.
Yeah, but Norman says that's the end of the show, so show's over, so he hangs up.
Yibbida, that's all, folks. Yeah.
And then he, we don't see him, but we know for a fact he's heading over to the hotel, and he phones Connie and tells her, meet me there.
At the house. He wants to do something at the house.
Yes.
Now,
Yes.
she's not quite sure what's going on.
Yeah, she's confused. By the time she receives the call from him, she's like baffled by why he has to go to the house.
Yeah.
Yes. So
Have some unfinished business.
So this is at the middle of the night, so you understand.
Yeah,
and
raining, wasn't it?
yeah,
On
again.
the way there, just like in the first movie of Marion Crane.
Yes.
And in what?
Yes.
The second and the third movie, it was raining.
Yeah.
They always bring a lot of rain into these movies, don't they?
I don't know.
And that isn't it supposed to be California? No.
Yeah, but we
It
did.
never
But we did.
rains in California.
But we did see a lot of thunder and lightning, throughout this movie.
Good atmosphere, good atmosphere, yeah.
Yes. So, anyway, we cut to them getting to the motel that's abandoned. It's all.
Yeah, it is getting pretty ancient and decrepit now, getting ready to be bulldozed, and
Yeah. So, anyway, Norman comes up to her car, and with his trusty umbrella.
And he says that. And that's a line out of the first movie again as well. Here I am, my trusty umbrella.
Yeah.
And he said that to Marion Crane when she was getting out of the car too.
Yeah. Another line he used was, "A boy's best friend is his mother," and this was in this movie too.
It's not like a man's best friend is his dog, and a dog's best friend is another dog.
He's a master. Anyway, so Norman grabs Connie's arm and takes her up to the house.
Drags her sort of roughly. It's like, oh, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Where everyone thinks, oh no, he's going to kill Connie. Oh,
No.
Lord.
Yeah,
And she's a nice lady.
Yeah, as they're inside the house, she talks about how their baby will be great.
A beautiful, wonderful child who's going to love you, Norman.
Yes, but Norman doesn't see it that way, and he takes the knife and he starts stalking after Connie.
No, he takes her up to Mother's bedroom.
Yeah.
And then he goes in to stay there, and he goes into the closet where he was locked, and underneath the floorboards in that cupboard is
The
a
knife.
dress and the knife. And I think the dress is down there with the knife, but he only grabs a knife out.
Yeah, meaning he's no longer.
It's not Mummy doing it.
It's not Mummy.
time.
It's Norma.
Norman doing it.
So Connie sees this and she runs like mad.
Well, I would.
Yes, and soon enough she hides and ducks, and Norman is stalking. And soon enough she heads into the basement and heads to the basement's door. What do they call it? The root cellar door?
Oh, those flappy doors. Whatever. That's all. Yeah, those outside doors you get into the cellar from the outside.
So she opens them and she runs into Norman, and Norman has her cornered, and he's about to do the horrible deed by dicing.
Slicing and dicing.
But he looks into the knife at a mirror reflection
and sees himself.
And he sees his eyes are no longer looking back as if his crazy self anymore. Like, he's starting to realize this is not him. This is no longer the murderer psycho he was.
Yeah, he's no. He just breaks it breaks the spell. I don't know how to put it. The spell came over him to take care of the business.
Yeah,
it broke that spell for some reason.
Connie says that this is no longer the person you were, and that you're not not a killer. And she says that the baby will not be a killer. And she says, "Do I count? I never killed another person's life."
So the baby will have her genes too.
Yeah, meaning she won't be a psycho, and the baby may have a mixture of both mother and father genes in it.
Really interesting, folks. Hey.
Yeah, and it may not he may not be a crazy person.
Anyway.
So Norman drops the knife and he takes Connie in his arms and gives her a hug.
And then did he take her outside, or he just sends her outside?
He takes her outside and says to her, right here, I'm going to take care of the past.
He does.
And he takes
can of fuel, kerosene,
and starts dosing his mother's room, his room, with it, and starts lighting a match and pouring them on fire.
Yeah, so he sets fire to the house to purge his. He'd do a purge, I suppose. Yeah,
I guess that's the word for it. I mean, so while he's doing this, he sees a few hallucinations of his other victims he kills.
Yeah, his mummy and some of the ladies and stuff.
Yeah, some of the girls.
Yeah, and whatever. And
the other woman that in the flashback earlier before this happens, was an older woman, and
we mentioned her.
Yeah, I know that, but her death was interesting because he comes behind and he strangles her.
Yeah, he didn't use a knife on her. See, that was a strangle job. That's strange, isn't it?
Yeah, and this is the first time we see him take her car to the swamp. in this movie. So,
Anyway,
irrespective, back to the present.
he sees all these little people thinking hallucinations, his mind, all these ghosts were coming and going, and they got burned up the house, so to speak, I suppose.
Yeah.
Burning the house was purging the past or something.
Yeah,
or,
so throughout he gets caught up with these weird hallucinations, and he gets a little creeped out by them, and he nearly damaged his leg in the process.
Oh yeah, he fell over the balustrade on the stairs when he was going down.
Yeah, thanks to stunt double work.
Yeah, and he hurt his hip a bit. He had to hobble downstairs to the cellar because the fire was all around him now. He spent too much time in the house, didn't he, folks?
Connie starts yelling outside, yelling for help outside, even though there's no one in a 40-mile radius.
There's no one. Don't you remember? The highway doesn't go past here anymore. There's no passing traffic. There ain't no houses. There ain't no Walmart. There ain't no nothing.
Yeah, and they may have unplugged the phones.
Well, yelling at a phone doesn't make it work, okay?
No. So anyway, Norman heads down to the basement to avoid the fire, and he sees the last vision he has of his decaying dead mother.
Yeah, the horrible
in the rocking chair.
Oh, look, she looked really bad. Yeah, hadn't had a feed for a while.
Yes. Yeah. Of course, the body burns and then it disappears. And then Norman finally gets out through the root cellar door.
Yeah.
And this is the door that everyone keeps saying you should lock it. But in some ways, this door kind of saves his life.
I've got a question. I got a big question.
What's
okay.
that?
This goes back to the second movie. Okay.
Yes.
Those kids kept breaking in through that window. Why didn't they go through those doors, which are always unlocked?
I don't know. Never asked. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So anyway, that's root cellar door. It kind of saved Norman's life from being unlocked.
He got it through there, and his wife, Connie, was standing there.
Yeah.
And she helped him get away because he had a sore hip or leg or something or other.
Yeah, and while the fire continues to consume the house.
There's a bit of a cut to the next couple of hours later.
Yeah, a couple of hours later, the fire department is there, and the house is still standing, but only bits and pieces are still there.
Bits of it missing because it's been chewed up by the fire. Don't worry, folks, it was only a model.
Yes.
And
Norman...
Actually, I think it was. I think they built another house. Because they said they're going to do it. They filmed it at the theme park, not at the studios, and actually built another duplicate house there.
Yeah, well,
so
makes sense.
it was actually a model, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah, so Norman in this, like in the third movie, he says he's finally free. Or free, anyway.
He's free, I'm free. He's burnt the past. Now, the funny part was, then just after that, the camera goes back to the cellar and you see a rocking chair moving by itself.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you hear Mother calling out,
"Let me out, let me out, let me
out." And
out.
the cell door closes or something or other. Yeah. And that was probably that would have been the last time Norman would have been going back to the house because he had a new life.
Yeah, so we fade out, and then we hear a little baby
in the
crying
darkness,
in the darkness.
So indicating that Connie has just had a little baby, and all is well. Hopefully, he didn't have horns and fins and everything else.
Yeah, but I did think the scene where Connie and Norman are hugging, and he's no longer wearing the creepy smile, but more of a smile of hope.
A normal smile, like anybody else would.
Yeah.
Any normal homicidal maniac after being in that house.
Yeah.
Right? No.
But I think he's now reconciled his past and no longer looking to the past for bad things.
Okay, let's get into that's the movie side of things, right? I won't talk too much about the post productions and other good groovy things.
Yeah,
and
just so you guys know, according to the movie, Anthony Perkins, he thought this was his favorite of the whole series, next to the first one.
I think it's definitely better than the third movie. I did like the second movie, but this one is really bounces off the first movie, ignoring the second and third. So technically speaking, you watch the first movie and watch the last movie, forget the two in the middle, and you still wouldn't be losing anything.
Yeah, that's true, Mike. I mean, I do admit though that when I look at this fourth movie, seeing as this takes place after the third movie, it got me thinking: how come he has stayed in the institute for 22 years in the second movie, and in this one it's 4 years?
Yeah. In between the first, second movie, he was in there for about 20 to 22 years, and after the third movie in this one, he's only there for 4 years. Now they must have some real radical treatment going on
Yeah,
here.
maybe. It is a bit weird that they would have, unless it was good behavior or
Or
something.
maybe he responded well to treatment.
Yeah,
I don't know, but
maybe.
whatever. Now, let's go on. This went straight to TV, so we can't talk about budget or anything else. We don't even know how much it cost to make or there's no box office figures. But all I can say is, I think it was directed well.
Yeah, another thing about this movie is that did you know that Henry Thomas, when he did the first murder scene with the young girl with the stabbing, that part of the knife went into his hand, which caused some nerve damage. To this day, he still has the scar.
Poor little monkey. What have any insurance for that sort of stuff?
Yeah, maybe.
Well, could have, ongoing problems, right? Oh, yeah, I'll never be able to play the piano or something rather, right?
Quite right.
Anyway,
Yes.
now, it was filmed. Excuse me. The movie was filmed at Universal Studios in Florida. It was the facade and of the motel and the house were actually rebuilt. And it was at a theme park down there.
Yeah, it was built in 1988, I think, on the back lots of Universal Studios, Florida. It remains there until the 1990, until it was torn down.
Well, yeah, actually, I think it was actually filmed before the theme park was opening, and there was a bit of an extended time of filming, so they actually had the tourists coming in there to the theme park, and they were allowed or had permission to watch the movie being made.
Yeah, that's cool.
Isn't that cute?
Yeah, another thing I should mention is after this film aired on Showtime, there were rumors going around that a fifth movie was going to be in the development process, focusing on Norman's newborn son. However, none of those rumors were true, and another Psycho film would not be made until Gus Van So-and-so does his remake of Psycho in 1998.
Yeah. Now, I mean, honestly, I think if they did the Psycho 5, I think they would have been milking it.
Yeah, that would
I mean, it had a good story.
And it had a good closure.
Yeah, it had a closure. He burnt the house, house down. The motel's going to be bulldozed. There's nothing left.
Yeah,
so
the house and the motel were the sort of the key point
that
to
was the
Psycho movie.
Yeah, that was the epicenter of his problem. You get rid of that, then Norman is really free.
Yeah, and this film was shot in 24 days.
I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah, very short shooting.
See, it can be done.
It can be done.
You did it.
Yes.
Ish.
Well,
yours about a week and a half, 2.5 weeks.
Well, everyone had good commitment. And
exactly.
And anyway, Steven Spielberg was so impressed with this film. He personally wrote to Mick
Karras,
a letter of pretty much a fan letter.
Yeah, fan letter. Oh,
the
wow,
letter
lovely.
is now in a frame in Mike's office to this day. Steven Spielberg, of course, worked with Henry Thomas early years prior to that movie.
Nothing. Yeah.
Yeah.
E.T.
Yes, the E.T. movie.
You sure he wasn't E.T.? Well, you know.
But you got to admit that. Do you think that Henry Thomas might have been still in contact with Steven Spielberg in order to get him to know about this movie?
Didn't have to be. Why? He wasn't doing the movie. He was only an actor in it.
I know. I just meant that he was He previously worked with Steven Spielberg.
Look, honestly,
in the other movie, he may have.
I would say that most of those big guys would know exactly what was going on in the industry around them, what movies were being made, what movies were worthwhile keeping an eye on.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you have got, let's say, Spielberg or made a really, really good science fiction, and somebody else decided to make a science fiction about the next year, you think he'd have a look to make sure that they weren't copying his style?
Good point.
So, yeah, so that's what I'm saying. They would know what's going on. They'd keep their finger to the pulse to make sure people weren't copying them or plagiarising them or doing things and stealing their ideas and that sort of thing. So I think he would know what's going on.
Yeah, so I guess the letter that Stephen gave him might have been, well, Mick probably held it as a prize achievement in his career.
Mr. Spielberg saw this movie. Yeah, look, Steven Spielberg might have been a fan of Alfred Hitchcock and might have been following the series.
Good point.
You never know. And that's what it is. And he said, "Wow, that was a really good movie." So he sent him a letter saying, "Hey, great directorship."
Yeah. So after this movie, Stephen King probably looked at it and thought Mick would be a great at directing two of his books. You know, Sleepwalker and the Stand movie.
Oh wow! See, so that's another point too. If they see a good movie and see a good directorship or a good actor, it gives them an idea. Hey, I'll see if I can borrow that person for my movie. You know, there's a cast, crew, whatever it's going to be. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's So how do you should we rate this movie now?
Oh yeah. I'm not going to give it a 10. I do not give 10s unless something in my eyes is perfect.
Okay.
Now, and the reason why I say it's not perfect is because Mummy's body moved during that early scene with that young girl in the bedroom. It should not have moved. It was a dead body.
Yeah.
Unless it was going to totally move and get up and roll over and talk to Norman, it shouldn't have moved at all. Okay?
Yeah, and another thing, the timeline. You know, I mean, for this movie,
they did jump a little bit here and there.
Yeah,
but that was okay. That was just only recollecting stuff.
Yeah, but with the key elements like the hotel when it was built, and the fact that it was built just after Norman's dad died, and the fact when
we believe it was. I mean, that's what
when Norman starts dating Chet or another guy.
Well, I think she had another guy after Dad died.
Yeah.
But I get the impression that Dad in this movie, Dad died, and the motel's there because they brought the body up to the house to have it on display there in the parlour, so people can come visit the body. So in this movie, the motel was made, but I really believe somewhere I heard that it was built after Dad died with some insurance money or something or other, and they used that money to invest in a motel to give them something to live on.
I know, but it was a man to encourage Norma to build the hotel, and that man went on to be Norma's lover of sorts.
Norma's lover, but he might not have stayed around very long because obviously he was no longer there.
Yeah, just might be.
And there's no mention of him being killed off by Norman, so he must have gone under the greener pastures.
Yeah, most likely. Yeah. But Chet is the only guy. I mean, otherwise Norman in this movie would have mentioned of two lovers.
Yeah,
already.
But the first one might have been there not long after Dad passed away.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, I remember in the TV show, the one that came years later.
That's the one with
yeah, it mentioned Norma had more than one man in her life in this movie, in the TV show.
The guy, the doctor guy, and I can't remember. I've got a mental block again. Oh, gee.
Yeah, I do remember that Norma had, a few lovers in the TV series.
Wasn't a bad-looking woman.
Well.
The TV series,
So how do you rate this movie apart from
I'm going to give it a 9 because that obviously what I thought was wrong.
Yeah, I mean, maybe if Joseph Stefano could have gone back and do a few fact checks here and there. If he's going to use sources of material from the original Psycho movie, he should try to make sure these facts fit the first movie.
Maybe he should have watched his movie.
Maybe. I mean, to fit if you're going to do a sequel, you're going to have to know your facts.
Yeah, and even though he wrote the original one, that's 20-something, 30, 40 years, what years since he wrote the first one. 30 years probably, yeah.
So many
30
years.
Plus, 30 plus years.
So maybe he may have forgotten a fact or two.
Well, he might have, maybe a bit of Alzheimer's, dear.
Maybe. So anyway, I give this movie 9 out of 10, I think.
Yeah, 2 nines, there you go.
Yeah,
That's still not bad, fact. I mean, it's a damn fine movie.
It's a good movie.
Yeah.
I like the that it doesn't take place at the hotel. It takes place in a new setting.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that Norman is no longer living at the hotel. He's
trying to get a new life.
Trying to get a new life. Even though I don't know too much about what he's doing now. He could be a stay-at-home father, I think.
No, he can't be stay-at-home. He might be a father now, staying home, but he may be a house husband type thing. And
that's what I mean.
Yeah.
He may stay at home while his wife Connie is working.
Well, she's earning good bucks. It's her house. She's invited him to live there.
Yeah.
And he's a kept man.
Yeah, and what I didn't say earlier was that the house that belonged to
Connie from her first marriage.
Meaning this was sort of a prenuptial thing. Whatever.
No, don't go into prenuptials. Okay?
Well, the husband gets something and the wife gets either the house or something.
It's a divorce settlement, okay?
Divorce settlement.
Leave it
okay, divorce settlement, if that's the word.
She got the house and the cat or whatever, and he had his testicles still in place. What? Sorry, folks.
What is with you tonight?
Well, the point... you think 2.5 Men, when Alan was left his wife and was divorced, she got the house, she got the money, got the car, everything else, and he went out if the clothes he was wearing. He had to live at Charlie's place. So that's why I said, sometimes the females get everything almost, and the guys got nothing.
Yeah, I don't know how it works.
That's why I said he walked out for his family. Okay, his family jewels are being nicer, okay?
Better.
Anyway, I think we call it quits. I think it's about it.
Yeah, so thanks for listening to this latest podcast. If you guys don't like the fact that... If you don't like the final cycle movie, please comment below if you can to let us know.
Like we value your opinion, and we have asked before if you got any comments, please comment. If you got any ideas on another movie you might want us to review.
And bear in mind, guys, if we can't get around to doing it just yet, it's because we got a long list of movies to get through.
We've got a whole list to go through. What's this space?
Yeah, so we're have a long list to get through.
Yes, horror, sci-fi, fantasy, and the odd other good movie.
Yeah, and I'm looking at doing a TV show later on. I haven't decided when.
Now, we won't do it episode by episode. We'll do it as a holistic approach. So if we did a TV series, we'll say we won't go, and see episode 1 and episode 2. We'd say, we'll talk about the characters
just talk about
the general plot.
Yeah, we'll just give you the small synopsis of the plot.
Yeah.
So
we won't mention any in particular because we might be doing them. So we don't want to do a spoiler, do we?
No. Well, maybe.
Well, we might do, or even. See, I'm not going to tell you.
Yeah, well, anyway, thanks for listening to our podcast, guys, and we'll talk to you guys again soon. This is Sarah Stephenson saying,
and this is Mike saying, bye.
Bye, guys.